Hello and welcome to Life in the Mind. I'm Murray Spear, and today Joy-Amy is not well, so she's having a week off. Whilst we get on with our guest today, who is Jake Bustle.
Hello.
Hello.
Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you. I think it'd be quite good to presage to start with the fact I've known you for
a long time.
It's a long time, isn't it?
I was trying to figure out how it's maybe like 15 years.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is okay.
Something,
I didn't realize it
something
probably
around
is
that.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if at any point we're talking in a way that sounds like we've known each other for about 15 years, that's why.
Yeah.
I'm not just that relaxed with, it's just that casual.
Yeah.
All the guests just so relaxed.
Yeah,
It's like, whoa,
absolutely.
I feel like I've known you for ages. I'm just that kid. Nope. Self-congratulation. But yes, lovely to have you on.
Thank you.
Let's start with the really simple one we always go with first. What is your relationship with neurodivergence?
So, I guess in terms of, the kind of labeling type things, I guess is probably a good place to start. I got my autism diagnosis when I was 23. 3 years ago now. I had to figure out how old I was.
I do that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every year it changes. It's really annoying.
So late diagnosed, relatively speaking. But I've been dealing with kind of like mental health stuff for a lot of my adolescent and adult life, which, never, the diagnosis that you get never quite seems like the exact right one.
Yeah.
And, so various different labels and things given to me by doctors and psychologists and people, until I found the one and maybe others that fits. Yeah. Just, the right ballpark now.
Yeah. Which are?
So autism, definitely diagnosed, got the certificate. ADHD, likely self-diagnosed at the moment, just because of the diagnostic services are rammed at the moment.
Yeah,
everywhere.
actually, can you explain a bit about that? We were talking about it briefly before we started recording, and it was a really interesting, nuanced situation.
Yeah, so I live in Wales. I work at Cardiff University, and I had a ADHD screening from the mentoring service that I have through my disabled students allowance, and had this screening, and the assessor was like, yeah, pretty much spot on. You've got the combined autism ADHD presentation.
Yeah.
But in my local area, NHS Wales isn't currently accepting any new adult referrals for adult ADHD diagnostic services. And because it's NHS Wales, we don't have the right to choose thing that NHS England has, where you can choose which service provider you go with, which means that a lot of these kind of smaller independent ADHD diagnostic services that England has, I can't access.
Yeah. So you could use them, but then couldn't connect them to the NHS services to actually get like any of the NHS support or medication support from them.
So I can't be referred to them. If I were to kind of seek them out, then it'd have to be through private healthcare and paying for all of that kind of stuff, which don't have. Funnily enough, a PhD stipend does not cover that kind of expense.
No, it is expensive.
Yes. So that's kind of, it's an awareness, and I get support, through my mentor and through my PhD supervisors, based on the assumption that I do have ADHD.
Oh, that's good.
But, in terms of like monetarily or healthcare provision from the NHS, I don't have anything because I don't officially have a diagnosis.
Yes. Yeah. So you can't. Yeah, you can access like medication.
No,
for example, and any support services that might exist. Strong
I think,
might.
yeah, I think if I did have the additional diagnosis, then I might be able to access more support through like disabled students allowance and things like
Yeah,
that.
good point.
But actually, what I've got at the moment works for me.
Yeah.
And it helps that I've got, you know, kind of really supportive supervisors who know their stuff. One of whom I think you're having a session with next week.
We are having, yes, your supervisor.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
colleague.
Dr. Catherine Jones.
Yeah, on which we're looking forward to. So having some really interesting discussions.
Yes.
Back to back. It's really, really good that you've been able to have that kind of bespoke experience given to you, even without that formalized diagnosis elsewhere. Because, I mean, that's something that is a really good thing to be happening, because across the board, these services are rammed because of the sudden upsurge. It's just been a massive uptick. And for places like Cardiff Uni to be taking that upon themselves to actually, we can recognise that, we can all but diagnose it and then do something about it and support as if, rather than being curtailed. That's really nice to hear.
Yeah, it's a really nice thing. And so I get through my DSA, I get some coaching effectively for ADHD or for common ADHD difficulties and struggles that we have, and you know, just some helpful advice on how to navigate that, how to navigate those challenges. And yeah, I mean, it is fantastic, and it's not something that I was expecting when I went into having this mentoring. But it's an extra helpful add-on.
Yeah, and that's often the best way, isn't it?
Yes.
When you're not quite expecting it, you don't know, and it comes out of nowhere. That's a lovely positive.
Yeah.
When you discovered your neurodivergence, how did that change your relationship with yourself?
It did. It's an ongoing change. I think like a lot of us who are diagnosed later on in life, we have often built up an attitude towards ourselves where we should be doing better. And I think that is something that I'm kind of still working through, particularly with, you know, kind of the schooling that I had, which was very kind of high pressured, very academically driven. I think being able to be kind to myself and to just actually take a step back and think, actually, you know what, you know, I am disabled. I do identify as being disabled. And I can't have such unrealistic expectations of myself. Now, I know this logically, but the moving that into kind of practicing kindness to yourself is it's an ongoing journey. We're getting there. I would say that's definitely the biggest way that my relationship to myself has changed after the diagnosis. I mean, I think there was probably initial like jubilation at finally feeling recognized and seen. And actually the diagnostic service I was with, I remember coming out of that and saying to my mum, I have never felt so listened to and seen in any kind of healthcare setting before. So that was just brilliant. And then, you know, after that kind of died down, there was almost kind of like a bit of a grieving period for the life that I thought I would have. And, you know, at that point, I didn't have any other kind of support put in place yet. I wasn't sure what I'd be able to do. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to, you know, continue on my academic pathway that I'd been kind of set on at this point, and all the kind of life things that you think you'll be doing. suddenly having the realization that actually those things might not be possible, or if they are possible, they're going to look very different. That, that was I do think grief is the right word for that. It's a process of working through loss to find acceptance out the other end. And I did find that acceptance, but it was a confusing time. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember meeting up not long after you'd had that assessment.
Yeah.
And then I'd had my assessment and then realization of the other.
You were a few years ahead of me.
I was a few years ahead of
pathway,
you.
yeah.
But it was so relatable. I remember like we met up and had lunch in our hometown, and we were chatting, and like all your relationship to that and that kind of that grieving, but also that jubilation, that feeling of being listened to and being like, oh my God, I feel like, oh my God, this is right. This is so right.
Yeah.
This is, all of those years of being told, this is me, or this is me, or I'm not doing this because actually I am this. And it's like, oh, but I'm not, but that doesn't quite fit. And then suddenly having this moment of, oh, it was so relatable.
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, grief, it's one of the biggest parts of it. It's such a tumultuous mix of emotions. And for me, one of the grief things was all that was lost.
Yeah.
All that could have been if it had been recognised earlier and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that I keep hearing from people as I talk to them. I know that you've heard from other people that we know as well.
But at the same time, I do, I kind of think that if I had been diagnosed earlier, then I think there would have been some things that I wouldn't have pushed myself to do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, I am not an outgoing person particularly, but I had the opportunity to do lots of theatre stuff when I was at school, and I don't think that's something that I would have kind of put myself out of my comfort zone had I had that diagnosis earlier, because I was just kind of feeling, well, this is a really cool thing. I know that this is not something that's within my comfort zone, but I would really love to be able to do this. And so I did. But if I had this is speculation about what could have been, but I do think that, I certainly in the immediate months following my diagnosis, I was immediately kind of restricting myself back.
Yes,
I was holding myself back because I'm working through all of these new realizations and suddenly being aware that the way I experience the sensory world, for example, is wildly different to how most people experience it.
And you're able to say no when you thought you couldn't before,
exactly.
For example, those kind of things.
But now, a few years down the line, I'm getting to the point where, because I know how to support myself through those difficult times, I can kind of push myself out of my comfort zone a little bit with the knowledge that I know how to support myself through that. I know what my exit strategies are for those kind of more difficult situations. And I feel a lot more comfortable to create a buffer zone of rest time and hold that sacred.
And then knowing things like needing to plan ahead for certain things with enough time to do that. That's a really good point, actually, that nuance of maybe you should know and then you wouldn't. We can never know the past, but it is interesting to consider how things might have been.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a massive wormhole to go down. But
it is something we probably don't have time for right now. But you could spend years thinking about the what ifs.
I've done that.
Yeah,
it's not very productive.
I was going to say I don't think it's necessarily the best use of time.
No, but it's an interesting thought experiment to go through sometimes, and actually in that productive way, like you were talking about, of then actually it might not have been a completely different or better life to have necessarily known earlier.
Yeah, because some of these,
don't know.
Exactly. Some of these experiences that I that I don't think I would do now are some of those experiences that I hold really dear, and are some of my fondest memories of that time of adolescence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's really
interesting
interesting.
to think
It
about
is
the
a
what
really
ifs.
interesting one.
Yeah.
Did you, when you found out, did you have a moment when you kind of came out to people as neurodivergent, or started or declared it in one big go, or did you do it more person to person basis? Or
I'm trying to remember actually now. I think so. It was an interesting story. I didn't realize I was autistic first.
yeah,
I was having a conversation with my mum. There were a few lecture theatres at my university where I went for undergrad where I struggled particularly to be in those spaces, and I couldn't figure out why. I mean, I studied psychology. The cohort was like 300 people, so it was 300 people in these not necessarily adequately sized lecture theatres.
yes,
And I remember saying to my mum, like, I can't be in those spaces, those specific lecture theatres, because it feels so cramped, it feels so noisy. I can't focus on the lecturer because there's all this like background tapping on keyboards and writing and pencils and things.
yeah,
And so my mum actually said, "Oh, well, autistic people have these struggles. Have you tried looking into some of the adjustments that they have for these kind of situations?" And I thought, oh no, that's an interesting point. We'd learnt about autism from like a academic perspective a few semesters before. So I thought, oh yeah, I can look more into that. And a week went by, hyperfixating on these, the sensory experience, and then therefore the kind of lived experience of autistic people.
Yeah.
Going further and further down the rabbit hole and realizing, oh no, this is far too relatable.
Oh, wait a second. This is getting more and more like a mirror.
And so probably about a week later, I went back to my mum and said, "Hey, what would your reaction be if I said I think I might be autistic?" And initially she was quite not against the idea, but she didn't think it was the right thing, because she was a social worker in the 90s, and she worked with autistic kids who were what we would now call, very high support needs.
Yeah.
So predominantly nonverbal, a lot of behavioral problems.
Very certain view of
exactly
what that meant.
Yeah, and at that time, that was the full extent of what autism was understood to be.
Yep.
And so she came back and thought, actually, you don't fit any of what my professional experience is. And then I sent her the National Autistic Society website. I sent her all these resources that I've been reading. Yeah. And to her credit, she read through all of them and then came back to me and said, yeah, spot on.
Which is great. I like, even both from her being your mum and doing that, having that journey, but also from that kind of professional background kind of side of things, of like, this is my experience. Then going, oh, actually, it's the goalposts have shifted.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm happy to change with that. And go, oh, that's, yep.
Yes.
Oh, what's wrong? And this is you.
So that was kind of the first discussions about the kind of coming out as neurodivergent. And then I told a few close friends that I was kind of going down this pathway, people that I knew would support me no matter what. But then when it came to actually receiving the diagnosis, I was very open and public about it, for the reason that I'd read a piece of research where it was looking at neurotypicals' attitudes towards autistic people, and how that if the neurotypical person doesn't know that their conversation partner is autistic, then their first impressions are going to be much more negative. Whereas if the neurotypical person does know that their conversation partner is autistic, then the difference in that initial perception is balanced out. So I just kind of read that and I thought, actually, it's going to be better for everyone
Yeah.
if I am open about it. And the people that are going to have a negative reaction to, I'm in a good enough position where I just don't have to have them in my life.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like
yeah.
if,
Get to that
if,
point of actually.
Yeah.
If you're gonna then don't need that. Nah. Okay. Cool.
if anyone's going to cause a fuss about it, then actually they're not going to be a good person for me to be around in the long term.
Yeah.
They're not going to be good for my mental well-being. And actually they've got these prejudices, and I don't think I'm going to do anything much to shift them
Yeah.
in that immediate first circumstance. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, you can.
They can shift, but it's good to recognize within oneself, because it's such a, for me, it's been such an important journey as well.
Yeah.
That exact thing of going, actually, maybe I could just narrow my field of interactions down, especially if once I recognized I had a smaller social
Yes.
energy than maybe
Yeah.
I thought I should have,
Yeah.
but never did have. I was like, actually, higher quality,
Yeah.
fewer higher quality interactions.
Yeah.
And if those people, and it's about, in a way, it's that celebrating ourselves as neurodivergent people.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking at what is good about ourselves, what's different about ourselves, what makes us who we are, and then running with that.
Yeah. And it has a professional complement to it as well. So when I'm, in a academic setting, like when I've been to conferences in the past, then actually having that the sunflower lanyard, which I often wear, just as a kind of like initial, okay, we're going to adjust expectations of what this social interaction is going to be like.
Yeah.
That has really helped. It's helped massively, and it's actually kind of been an initial contact point with a lot of academics who wouldn't normally be involved in kind of the autism neurodivergence world. When I've been to kind of neuroimaging conferences in the past, I've had questions about the sunflower lanyard and my experiences of it from people who don't have anything to do with autism and neurodivergence.
That's brilliant in itself, in terms of just how that you're opening up the conversation and stuff, and that is such a, it's such a brilliant thing to always do. Or anyone else we can get involved in the conversation, moving through things.
And I'm very
it's always
grateful
great.
that I'm aware I'm in a privileged position of being able to do that in a safe way, because I know that's not the experience for everyone.
But you can only speak for your experience, and that's what you're doing. You're sharing your personal experiences, while we get different guests on different times.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to pull this one together now. I think we could talk for double this time easily. But we will be back with you talking a bit more about the neuroimaging side of things and your research, PhD and stuff, which is really interesting. So please do join us for our next episode to hear more about that. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jake.